which is going from ACT to SAT. And in that transition, the condition is VDSP equals VGSP minus V threshold P, where this is a negative number. Now, the grounded gate, because this has got the substrate, which is at VDD, and so when the gate is grounded, it looks like it has a negative supply voltage. So VGSP is minus VDD, and this becomes minus VDD minus V threshold P. Now the Kirchhoff equation just your basic voltage equation. This is kind of like item 1, item 2. Kirchhoff equation says VDD, which is the power supply voltage, equals VDS in minus VDS P. So just take off the E-type voltage. Remember, the drain is hose in this thing. And now we basically have VDSP, which we can put in that equation. And so we get VDD equals VDS in minus VDSP equals 0, which is the output, minus VDS P. And we're going to drop that in here. And we get the third equation, which is the VDD. So the third one, VDD equals V0, and then a minus, and then put minus VDD, because that's what this is here. Minus VDD, and minus the threshold voltage for the P-type device, which is equal to V what plus VDD plus V threshold P. Looky, the VDDs cancel out, and we wind up getting V0, or V out, equals minus V threshold P. What's V threshold P is negative, so what that tells us is this thing is all the way over at V threshold P magnitude, basically. That's where this came from. That part slammed up to the top, that we are already at V threshold P in that diagram. So what does that tell us a little bit about the voltage transfer characteristic? VTC. Here's our V out, V in. And as before, we're cut off for the N-type device. We're essentially stuck at VDD. So this is VDD here. And this is still, this is a different plot now from the one we had there earlier. There. This is still the V threshold in. Because this N-type device is cut off here. So this is actually D. And that would be N SAT P act. And we will reach a point here, which I will call B to C. So transition taking place there. And this thing falls off. This region in here is now B. So that's N act. And of course B is mostly act in this case. And then it'll come down, there'll be another point down in here where we'll slough off to region A. find all these different transition points. But one of the things we can tell you at this point is that V out at the AB transition, which we just looked at, is the equation we showed up here. And so this voltage on the output, V out, is equal to minus V threshold P, or the magnitude of V threshold P. So actually know the vertical point here. Still need to maybe, it would be nice to get all these characteristics, but not all of them are necessary to get to the point where we can set what we want, which is the inverter. And you might think this might be a good candidate for the inverter, and it turns out that we'll be looking at these different segments and finding that someplace in the middle, one of the segments is actually the best place to declare the inverter. And once we do that, and that will require us being somewhere near the middle. This is a good VTC, then someplace in the middle it should look like it's, or someplace on that vertical segment. Of course, we don't have a vertical segment anymore, but something that looks like that should be around 0.5 VDD. That would be a good place to look for an intercept point and then see if we can set that to be something with a ratio of betas for the devices. Now, one of the things we can do is go after this, which at least tell us something of what's going on here. So we'll take a look at that. And so the V at the DC intersection has the N-type device in saturation, and the P-type device is active. And of course, VGSP, as we just described earlier, is minus VDD. Okay. And we're kind of looking around for maybe V out. And so also we have our expressions for this thing up here now, and we have VDS P equals, again, minus VDD plus V out. That's the Kirchhoff equation. So we can plug that in there. And we wind up getting the beta in over 2 V out squared equals, and then we would have the VDD times, let's see, minus VDD minus V threshold P times minus VDD plus V naught minus VDD plus V naught squared over 2. Okay, this is plugging this in and the other expression we have here, which is this. And a little rearrangement, beta n over 2 V naught squared equals, we can collect some of these terms together. So this is VDD squared over 2 plus V threshold P times VDD. So there's no V naughts there. Yeah. And then plus a minus V threshold P times V naught. That's this guy here. And that has a V naught in it. And then minus V naught squared over 2, which is this piece over here. And that's times beta P. So it's just sticking all the relevant key points and so forth into the equation. Whereupon we can rearrange this equation, a little simplification here early on, divide by beta P. Let's do this. And we get beta N over beta P. We get rid of the 2. minus V threshold V naught minus V naught squared. Or 0 equals VDD squared plus 2V threshold P times VDD minus 2V threshold P times V naught minus 1 plus beta n over beta P, and you start seeing the ratio showing up times V naught squared. Over time, we call the V naught to X. This is basically usual. C is then V naught VDD squared plus 2 V threshold P VDD and V equals minus 2V threshold P, and A equals minus 1 plus beta N over beta P. Whereupon, using our usual quadratic form, we'll then get this VC, which is the output voltage at that point. So this gives us the output voltage V out, which I'll call VBC in this case. And it's minus V threshold P plus or minus the square root of V threshold P squared plus 1 plus beta n over beta P times this whole mess, VDD squared plus 2V threshold P VDD. Also the root of that, all divided by, there's 2 minuses that cancel, so it's a plus 1 plus beta n over beta P. And then there's, of course, the usual sign problem. This would be a positive number, but basically this has to be bigger than V threshold P. It's above it in the diagram. And so plus is the solution. Push it further to the right. Is greater than V threshold P magnitude, which is minus V threshold P. And that gives us the appropriate equation. And so then the VI for the VC transition would be VO VC plus the V threshold P-type device. That's at this P point, and that's then equal to 1 plus beta n over beta P times the V threshold for the P-type device. That's just incorporating one more of these over here. Minus V threshold P plus the square root of V threshold all squared plus 1 plus beta n over P, all times VDD squared plus 2 threshold P VDD. Close the parenthesis, this, divide the whole mess by 1 plus beta n over beta P. And that gives us both the X and the Y for this peak point, if you will, between the different segments. And that's our, we have this voltage here, and also gives us the voltage there. So that most likely place where we're going to find a half of VDD, though, would be in the C segment. So let's go and try to get the C segment. This is clearly to the right of V threshold P, but we're not going far enough along. And the really long segment that drops the most distance is the C segment. And in that region, we have Of course, the IDS in is saturation, IDS P is active because it's always active anyway. And therefore, we're looking for that particular characteristic, not looking for, it obviously should intersect the previous segment of the VDC boundary, which is another check where we have the right answer. Someplace on this segment we might find a half VDD, and that will tell us what V inverter should probably be for this problem. That would be halfway down in the middle of the VTC. We'd like to position that transition down someplace in the middle. So to get the entire segment of C, we have to do the usual stuff. So we'll put N instead of the saturation region. This is the input voltage minus V threshold N all squared. IDS for the P active, allowing for all the different minus signs, minus beta P, all multiplied times minus VDD, minus V threshold P, VDSP, minus VDSP all squared over 2. So that would be the entire section for C. And VDSP in this case that we're looking at would be VDSN. This is the Kirchhoff law. So K law. Kirchhoff equation is stacking the two transistors on top of each other and taking into account the DS and the Ds point to each other. Signs right. Would then put all that in the equation. Also, VDS in is equal to V out. So put all that into these different places in the equations and end up getting beta N over 2. V input on this side, V threshold N all squared equals, and we can then put all this VI into the equation. This is beta N over 2 times VI squared minus 2 V times the V threshold times VL, V out, V in, times V threshold N plus V threshold N all squared, close bracket, equals, keeping our minuses around, but then this is V IDS and equals minus IDSP. So the signs cancel. And we went with beta P here, minus V threshold. This is for the N-type, V-type device. V output minus V out squared over 2, plus, and then get the garbage term. VDD over 2, all the junk in it, V threshold P, VDD. Okay, and with a bit of rearranging to get our usual quadratic form, we eventually will then get that range, and we get beta N over beta 2 beta P is equal times VI minus V threshold N all squared equals minus VDD minus V threshold P, V out minus VDD. We'll call that X. And then minus V out minus VDD all squared over 2, and this is X squared. In rearranging, we get 0 equals beta N over beta P, VI minus the threshold N, all squared plus 2, VDD plus V threshold P times X, plus X squared over 2. That's equal to 0, so we got our quadratic equation. A is 1, B is 2 times VDD plus V threshold P, and C is equal to to, can make it minus VDD plus V threshold P plus or minus square root of VDD plus V threshold P all squared minus beta N over beta P times VI minus V threshold N all squared, la la la. Again, X is also equal to V out minus VDD. That's the definition of it. So we can rearrange this to find V out. V out then is equal to minus V threshold P plus or minus, as we're another one of these little squirrely sign things, VDD plus V threshold P squared minus beta N over beta P times VI minus V threshold N all squared, and the square root proceeds all the way over here. And then rearranging this further, we get V out plus V threshold P all squared equals VDD plus V threshold P all squared minus beta N over beta P. Okay. By the way, we needed to put the plus sign on there in order to get this thing to the right of V threshold P. We know it's someplace over there, but we just don't know where. Times VI minus V threshold N all squared. And that's it. What we're going to do is solve this equation for beta N to beta P, which is the parameter of design interest. See if we can force the issue of having V out be half of the supply voltage. So solve for beta N over beta P, which is our design parameter that we wish to get. And we find beta N to beta P equals VDD plus V threshold P all squared minus V out plus V threshold N all squared, all divided by this VI minus V threshold N all squared. And now we've got the VI and the VO on the right, which seems really odd because normally we're trying to solve the V out terms of the N, but in this particular arrangement, what we're trying to do is find this for a specific combination of things that would set our voltages up nicely. So try to get VI equals 0.5 VDD. What would that do? We'll also pick arbitrarily V threshold P equals minus V threshold N. We'll take it at minus 0.2 VDD. Now, in the modern era, that's not correct, but if this were a 5-volt power supply, this would make this 1 volt, which is what it was, and it is in our existing kit, which is 500 nanometer kit. It's a very old-fashioned kit. It would be something else for the more modern era. It shows how you can go about getting the ideal beta N to beta P. So that means beta N to beta P is going to be, using all this and all that, all this, is going to be 0.8 VDD all squared minus V out minus 0.2 VDD all squared divided by 0.3 VDD all squared. And the real goal is not only to get that 0.5 volts on the input, but to get it at the output too. That would be neat, because then the thing passes right through the thing, right to half and half point. Right? And that's what we're trying to do here. So let's see if we can actually, if we can't solve the equation, then it's not on this segment. We have to do the other segment on it, all right? But fortunately, and this is in the book by Wesley. Business work, cite that book. So try getting 1.5 VD. So this will put our transition right pick VDD to be 5 volts. When we stick all that in there, we get the following equation. Our main design parameter, which is the ratio of the betas, and contains the ratio of the width-to-length ratios, which are our design parameters. We get this minus 0.09 times VDD squared, all divided by 0.09 VDD squared, in which case beta n is 6 beta p. Now you might say that's huge, but not quite, because that says mu in Cox width-to-length ratio for the n-type device equals 6 mu p Cox times width-to-length ratio for the p-type. Okay. Now remember, Vp, at least for our classic kit, is 1 over 2.7 times the electron mobility at more or less room temperature. These numbers skyrocket when you've got a liquid nitrogen temperature, and that's one of the reasons why you can see people form liquid nitrogen in microprocessors and they're like 9 gigahertz or something. Would you like a 9 gigahertz computer? The trouble is the liquid nitrogen boils off immediately. You just have to keep pouring it on. Anyway, and so that kind of helps because this is approximately 1/3 of mu n, and then we just get width-to-length ratio for n. It's only about 2 width-to-length ratio for p, which is kind of upside down from what we had been experiencing before, where we were saying, well, we have to have the p-type device much bigger than 2.7 of the n-type device, at least, maybe even bigger than that in some of our layouts. And this is saying, actually the n-type device is bigger than the p-type device. And that's just for an inverter. Remember, we're actually doing things where we're building these kinds of circuits too. So that's an inverter. And it just has one device pulling down. But we're interested in, having this type of door structure for PLAs, which is the main application space. Now remember, whenever we have pull downs, we have that frightening problem where it becomes data dependent. So the usual thought is we want it to work well when there's at least just one pulling down. If there are 2 pulling down, they'll beat the battle. So we usually design it so that this would be a 2-to-1, and this could be 1-to-1. Okay, because it's the n-type device is bigger in this case. And just make them both this. Now, if they're both on, it's going to shift the voltage transfer characteristic by a square root of 2, which is 0.7 of the median point. So it's actually going to take us from 0.5 volts to 0.35 volts. It's quite a substantial move for the BTC. And of course, if we had 4 of them, it's going to be worse. 10 of them would be even worse. So there are limits even to this thing, but then there would be limits to the input to a NOR gate anyway. You don't want to have more than about 4 or 5 inputs, maybe 6. And then you're going to have noise problems no matter what you do. So you start thinking about factoring how this range things. Usually for PLAs, you don't get 6 or 7 of these pulling down. If you do, you have a problem. But just wanted to point this little issue out here. Okay. That's another scale, another class of circuits, which is the ground gate pull-up. Okay. And, talk about one other thing, which is my favorite subject. Well, everyone know this. One other style of logic design is also oriented towards trying to deal with the switching noise problem. And it's, of course, the issue of switching is causing the problem. So there's another type of logic design which is called current steering logic. In the current steering logic idea, what you do is you have maybe two type N devices here and some kind of a current source. And you have to supply all the complementary signals. So if this is X and this is X bar, what happens is if X is 1, this turns on and that one turns off. The current is steered this way. So let's say the current source is like this, and we come up here and we have a power rail or something like that. We probably need to have some kind of a pull-up. I'll just draw resistors for the moment. And then what we'll do is when this is flowing, this will develop a voltage here and drop below VDD. Okay, so this will be low, but then there's no current flowing here, so this will pull up to VDD. And so these are complementary outputs. And it's in the form that if this X is applied here, it's going to pull the voltage down over here. So this will be Q bar, this will be Q. So it's kind of like a tricky little inverter that can produce both the signal and its inverted output, except you have to supply the inverted input to it to make it work. Which might sound at first blush totally useless. But we can start stacking these current steering mechanisms on top of each other to build logic functions. It has the advantage that it always produces a complement, so you don't have to have special circuits for the complement, and it usually produces them without skew. So the Q and the Q bar go up and down pretty much in sync with each other. It's a problem if I put an inverter to get my complementary signal. The inverter is going to have some delay associated with it, so the X and the X bar exactly complements each other. For a brief period of time, they may both be high or both be low, which can cause glitches. So, here's another idea, which is let's turn this into a multiplexer. So I'll have a switch signal down here, and then I'll just stack another current steering mechanism on top of it, like this. And over here on the other side. And so now I would come up here and I have to go over here a little bit. And then have another here, so here. Then I'll put my current source in here. And this is my switch variable. And I'm either going to pass current here or I'll pass it over here. When I pass it over here, it either can go this way or that way. And this could be an A bar. So if the current's going this way and I have my A signal, and it will flow this way. At that point, I want to pull down a rail. So I go up to a rail. It has a pull-up resistor on it. Okay. And as this current's flowing, it pulls down this output, and I get basically the signal that I selected here, which is A, and get it complemented. On the other hand, if I put this over here, then I would want to have a complement going up the output, so I need another rail. And one is going to be called Q bar. And to make this sort of self-consistent, I'll make that Q bar. And have another pull-up here. There's two pull-ups in this case. And attach this one here and attach that one there. And this takes a copy of A. If X is 1, takes a copy of A and either pulls down this one or pulls down that one, depending on whether A is 1 or 0. I could select this side over here by making x equals 0, so it's like a mux. And then in this case, the B signal will be routed to the output and connected up the same way. So it's only the path that gets activated that we can pull down, and then it gets the appropriate fix at the output. The other dots are all not pulling down, so the thing rises up to VDD. And this is the mux. Basically, it's a mux. We could build adders, we could build all sorts of crazy stuff with this. This is the output Q. Except we have Q and Q bar. We have to supply everything in complementary form. It supplies the complementary output. Problem with the technology is it requires twice as many wires to communicate signals around. There is some small possibility of using this technology where the two signals are not complements of each other, indicating that maybe something isn't finished. Or they're complements of each other, in which case the signal is finished, which can be used as an asynchronous technique to indicate that some complicated logic block is finished. There's one possible pathway to an all asynchronous design, but I'm just mentioning it as a possibility. And we can put any things up here we want. In fact, we can extend the stack up higher. Of course, as you do it, you need more voltage. That can be a problem if you need something going about 2 or 3 times the normal standard voltage. That can be too much power. But one of the advantages it has is that this VDD up here and that ground are in common, and so the current is constant going through the system. Either goes this way or goes that way or so forth. It's steered. It's not turned on and off. Therefore, there is no switching noise. No switching noise. Now, if you're doing analog circuit work in an adjacent part of the chip, and you have a lot of switching noise, there's a bunch of tom-toms going bangity bang, 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 bang. That noise is not only going to corrupt your logic, but it's going to get over to the analog part of the circuit, causing problems over there. And of course you can say, well, I'll stick to lots of bypass capacitors all over the place, but they take up space. And it's an expensive extra step to put it in there. So this is a way to kind of at least quieten the circuit down, and we use it quite a lot at very, very high frequencies. And by high frequencies, I'm talking 60 gigahertz or something like that. You can do digital logic at 60 gigahertz. There are devices around that will do that. And one of our research projects is to push that limit up towards 1 terahertz. We actually have the devices to do that. Please, somebody fund it so that we can build it and demonstrate to the planet Earth that it works. And then your laptop will not run at 5 gigahertz. It'll run at 30. Maybe faster. Lots of problems ahead, but it's an exciting prospect. What about that current source? For current steering logic. Sometimes this is also called current mode logic, but it's a little more picturesque as called current steering logic. What we want is a fixed current source. And we want to fix that somehow so it's just constant. And how do we do that? It turns out that there's something called a current mirror. Actually has a name, Widlar. Named after Mr. Widlar, how his work is. And it works like this. Basically, we have an adjustable knob over here and the power supply. And then we have a FET. We reach around, we connect the gate of the FET to, let's say, the drain. Now, what this does is it makes, this is VGS for this device, and we're fixing this current with this resistor. That VGS can go over to another FET, which can can have a different width to length ratio, and thereby change what this is. But if the width to length ratio is 1, that VGS is on this line, and this is going to be grounded too. So that same voltage VGS appears over here. This one, however, doesn't see the loading effect of what's going on up here. So it's like a voltage standard. I can fix VGS by twiddling the knob or setting it. Then I can stack my CSL on top of that and have it pulled up to the power supply and have its little various outputs and inputs into it. So that's called a Whittler current mirror, and it is a way of making a current source. So this is fixed because this VGS sets that current. We try to set it up so this is a saturation current. And so therefore it's directly linked to VGS ISP threshold, or say it's an intact device. Okay, and that'd be the saturation current that's fixed based on what we're doing over here. Okay. There are other cute things we can do, because if you believe that this would be the only way to build a circuit, we'd have bigger and bigger and wider layers as we begin to add more layers for more inputs. But it is possible to prune that circuit and remove, by just changing the order in which some of the inputs go into the circuit, to prune that circuit so it has fewer of these steering elements in it. And that pruning process looks like a graph, and I'm not going to take a lot of time at this point. Of course, you're going to have to do that. Maybe we'll look at it later, of course, if we have time. But it can do very efficient uses of transistors by doing that. The other little small topic I'm going to cram in here is called a tri-state driver. So that's an inverter. Look at this diagram here. It's an inverter, but it has another control input. Okay. And it doesn't just put out high or low voltage. It has a way of becoming disconnected somehow from the circuit that it is deriving. That's why it's called a tri-state driver. It has 3 outputs, a high, a low, and I'm not here, a high impedance condition, which looks like it's not been connected to whatever was following the circuit. So it drops out, disappears. That type of circuit can be built, again, kind of a CMOS mode. In which we have 2 signals here which are used basically to put the complement of the signal here and the signal here, which means if I have this high, that'll be low, and they're both on. Well, why do you want to do that? If I have this one off, that one goes off. I have nothing connected to the output. It's been disconnected. Now I can have another input like this, which does not have this extra inverter on one line. And the output is then either A, complemented because it's an inverter structure, or it's nothing. So it's A bar or high impedance. Disconnected from the output. And pretty much the same kinds of conditions are used to set some of the width to length ratios in here, but I'm just mentioning it because it can be used to drive buses. I can have a bus with multiple guys trying to get on the bus and have their speech. They each have to have a different enable. This might be an output. idea is that with this complement over here, when this one's off, they're both off. It's just like, I cut this thing completely free of this bus. It's not loading it, it's not driving it, it's not interfering with the other guys. Then you have to make sure that all these enables are not simultaneously on. Otherwise, you will get a collision of signals on this bus, which is not good. And one of the timing things that people worry a lot about buses on microbuses or anywhere else is getting accidentally two of these guys talking to the bus at the same time. It's your responsibility to design to make sure there were two of them on at the same time. And we cover that a lot more in computer hardware design, where we do that actually with bipolar devices. And, but this is the main idea that I'll cover here. Anything else there? Okay, our next subject is a very important one. We now have enough information to design the static properties of our integrated circuits. Believe it or not, we've actually graduated in the most important part of the course. We now know about setting width to length ratios, or ratios of width to length ratios. And sometimes you can't set them all that well. So your VTC is wandering around based on data that's coming in. Yikes, that's scary. Right. It's going to have another impact. The next topic is, okay, we haven't had any load on the output of our circuit. I just started to ease into this a little bit here by talking about a bus. What I'm going to talk about now is charging and discharging loads. And the loads will be capacitive. And they're capacitive in the CMOS world, the FET world. It's a little bit different when you have bipolar devices because their bases do have some supply current. That was the primary argument against using them, because there was an extra little current draw that you had to worry about. However, the bipolar devices that we're talking about now are terahertz devices, and our FETs are they ain't getting any faster. In fact, they're getting slower. So they're throwing more cores at you and say, oh, gee, what am I going to do with these cores? You know, turn them off, maybe? You know, okay, I'll turn them off. Now, the capacitive charging has a number of implications, one of which is it increases the delay or causes delay. In fact, it's the primary cause of delay for these circuits. They have a nominal delay of their own. But when they presented with a capacitor that they have to charge, then that's a problem for them. They have to feed the current into there. And so that causes delay, but the second thing we're going to come back to after we discuss that is it's a source of dynamic power distribution, which is the primary source of CMOS power loss. So let's start out, really, really simple here. I'll just give you an inverter, the CMOS inverter. And I'm just going to put one load here. So now the current is not going to be zero going out here. It's got an actual load that it has to drive. However, in the switching event, which turns maybe one off and the other one on, during that period of time, they're generally quiescent and don't have any current flowing. And so our VTC is perfectly legitimate to compute it without having any current going. Once we do the switch, then there will be a period of charge and discharge, and there is current flowing out or in the output. So this is our V out, and it's also the capacitive voltage here. And so now suppose I charge up this device by having a low voltage at the input. This is an inverter, so my V in, let's make that low. And let's wait for a long time, because what's happening now is this transistor is on, it sees a capacitor, and current will flow and charge up the capacitor. And of course, it never gets to its final destination completely, which is one of those nasty problems with capacitors. But it gets close. At a certain point, you don't care what the difference is, so unless you have 50 billion of them, that could be a problem. But then at some point, we want to maybe snap up the input, and then this top one's going to go off. Now, when we reach this point, there's no current flowing. So we're back to the point where the VTC is relevant. We snap the input up, and now we're going to have a discharge path. So interestingly, the current flows out of the output when we're charging, and then it flows back into the input when we're discharging. So the output is also the input. The current goes into the swallowing current, and then this will discharge back down. Okay. How long does it take to do it? It takes roughly this much time, whatever that RC charging behavior is. Now, just to point out, where does the heat come from? When I charge up this capacitor, I have had to pass charge, all that charge that's on the capacitor, through that transistor. Guess what? It's going to light up with heat. Current flowing through the transistor equals heat. Now, the amount of heat that's generated is completely determined by the amount of charge that moves onto the capacitor. Okay? Is that clear? So the heat that's going to be dissipated is strictly determined by the capacitor. It's got to do with charge moving, and that charge is determined by the capacitor and the voltage that's applied. Okay, so energy that goes over here is equal to the final power supply, VDD, and it's going to be squared and multiplied by the capacitor, divided by 2. Okay, and that's the total amount of energy that will be on that capacitor. And then guess what? I'm going to dump it to ground. Where did the energy go? Capacitors don't dissipate any heat. It's going to cook the transistor. That's where your heat is going. So now imagine a 10 nanometer by 10 nanometer by 10 nanometer cube. We had a lot of trouble doping before. And now all the heat is coming out of this 10 nanometer by 10 nanometer by 10 nanometer cube. Ow! Of course, the amount of heat might be small, but then, of course, the capacitance is what's determining the amount of charge. You put too much capacitance out there, you got an awful lot of heat in a small place. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, electrical engineers, you all have to become mechanical engineers and learn about taking heat out. Back to school. Get another degree in mechanical engineering, specialize in cooling. But figuring out, so that's the point, is that once this discharges, all the energy that was stored on the capacitor is gone. Where did it go? It's in heat, because by the time that charge gets down here at 0 volts, charge at 0 volts has no energy, right? So all the heat's there, ouch, out of there. But how long does it take is what we're really addressing here. Now I'm going to concentrate on the discharge first. So little simpler. So we've already charged it up, let's say, and now it's discharge. And this happens, of course, again when the step comes at the input. Now, here's an approximation. It's used everywhere in the book. Sometimes they don't mention the book. Approximation is input snaps at 0 time. So, boop, goes up 0 time, and then we immediately turn on these transistors at some negligible time, and then, oops, everything slows down. There's no charging, discharging this capacitor. Now, of course, if there's a gate driving this state, it's going to take finite time. Its rise time will be depending on how much capacitance this gate shows the driver. So this is really wrong, but every single calculation is going to be done, and it's done in the books, is done under that assumption. Here's an obscure paper that was written a long time ago in Transactions on Electronic Design on trying to actually feel what the effect of cascading finite rise and fall times would be. The nature of this thing is such that often we wind up with one wire or one something that's really big, and it dictates all the delay, so we should focus on that. The gates themselves generally pretty light delay. And the typical number for a microprocessor is that the clock cycle is about 14 gate delays plus the delay of charging the longest wire in the microprocessor. So it's a pretty simple formula. Just give me the layout, I'll look around for the longest wire. And generally that longest wire is on the clock circuit, so that tells us pretty much how much time it's going to take to clock the system. Okay, so we have this approximation that we're going to be using. And I'm also going to start out with assume full charge up of the load capacitor. Which of course is never going to happen, because this never completely charges up. So assume that V on the capacitor at 0 plus, right after the input snaps up, is equal to VDD. And as I just said, it's never quite that. Maybe only 90% of VDD in the real world, 95%. But it's approximation. Do it all approximately. And we're interested in looking at the discharge curve, which is actually this part of this curve here. So we're assuming that this is VDD. It actually got all the way up to VDD. 4 approximations. So now, when this is discharging, there is a current flowing through this transistor, and that current, together with the current that is flowing out of the capacitor, sums to 0. So C sub L, which is the load capacitor, times the rate of change of the output voltage with respect to time, plus the IDS, or let's say the N-type transistor, which is dumping current to ground. That's the equation. Okay. But what region of operation are we in? Well, let's take a look at this situation, because we're in that steady state condition. One of these devices is cut off. It starts out in cutoff, and then it snaps up. And if we're at VDD, which is up here someplace, go into a mode where it's on. And the most likely thing in this scenario is if you're anywhere near VDD, you're going to first come out in the saturation region. And you're going to discharge down that curve. And then at some point, you're going to snap over and end up on the active part of the N transistor. And it takes a dive down to 0. Just following this curve. It was here originally, or cut off. Boom, we snap up. Thing is basically in saturation. An instantaneous amount of current will start flowing and then decays down. So it's not a simple charge and discharge. It's got different behavior here, different part here. So we expect two components to the charging and discharge at the time. Now, we all know about this situation here, which is the SAT-ACT transition. That would be a case where this is the output voltage from the N-type device, VDS. The N-type device is the output voltage. That this key point here would be VGS in minus V threshold in, and this is VDD up here. So the first step is go from VDD discharge down to this voltage down here. The rest of it's going to be down through the active region. So here's this fundamental equation, and we're going to go into saturation first. C sub L, dV out, dt, plus, okay, drop in your saturation formula. Set that equals 0. Till, of course, that kink point here. Till VDS in equals V out equals VGS in, which is VDD in this case. Snap it all with VDD minus V threshold in. And this is VDD minus V threshold in. So, to take that equation and multiply by dt. Okay, so this goes up here, and I can move things around onto the other side of the equation, and change variables. When I change variables, my dV will be an integral over dV, and the other integral will be on time. Then allowing for the minus sign that you get because of the this is going in there and getting this on the other side of the equation, I would get, this is the minus side getting changed. And I'm going to go, with the sign change, put the VDD down here. Okay, and I'm going to go, I'll actually make it go to 0.9 of VDD, just I'll fix this little problem right now. So not an approximation, I'll just take it to 0.9. So I'm going to drop from 0.9 VDD down to this VDD minus V threshold. So I can actually fix that problem there. And divide by this quantity here, which is beta n over 2, and VDD minus V threshold n all squared. It equals integral from the time that we start, with discharge, which we call time t1 to time t2. dt. So I just rearrange 1 and got 2. There's my dt over here, divide by all that stuff. This is a constant at this point, so that goes down there. What we get is T2 minus T1, which is equal to the fall time piece 1. This is the first part of the fall time. This is the one where we're going down and then equals, and you can see some of this 2 come up here as 2CL, and we evaluate. This is tau F1, is the first piece of the decline for discharging down. And the other one is harder, so I'm going to put that off to next time. I'll give you a kind of a little to look forward to is when I get the other piece of this discharge time. And it's got all kinds of logarithms